how would gold and silver be controlled, Kirk or Stewart or Dr. Davis? How would gold and silver be controlled? How would it play out in that scenario?
I have a feeling just like it did in 1933 when the currency was collapsing. Nobody wanted the dollar then, and so what the government did is they said, okay, well, you're going to have to invest in war bonds. We got to pay for this war somehow. When people didn't want to invest in war bonds because they were investing in gold, it was a much better alternative. Basically, the government said, we're going to confiscate. So then you had to kind of go underground, so to speak. And even back then, and under that confiscation, only 10% of the population turned it in. 90% said, over my dead body, we need this stuff to survive on. I have a feeling it's going to be the same way. And who does that control? Well, your guess is as good as mine. You know, Dr. Davis is a much better person to answer on things of the Fed, but the Fed has been given much more jurisdiction over things that they shouldn't have control of. I wouldn't be surprised if they ultimately had jurisdiction there, or the IRS, or maybe the Treasury Department, but my guess would be the Fed.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Kirk. I think that you're absolutely correct, and I think that what we have to do is we have to stop the Fed from taking these kinds of actions, because none of these are in the best interest of the American public. That's what people need to understand, is that, you know, if we can sue the Fed through this multiple class action litigation, just like was done with big tobacco, we can actually have injunctions filed against the Federal Reserve from taking these kinds of unilateral powers and these kinds of actions that were not delegated to them either by Congress or the people. I mean, since the Federal Reserve Act has happened, it's been amended 100 times, and each time we've seen a little bit less and a little bit less of our freedoms as a result. I think that this is the key issue, is that we must enjoin them, we must stop them. That can be done through the courts. It's been, the Federal Reserve lost 2 big cases last year against Bloomberg and Fox, and it gave us tremendous precedent to step in and force them to stop doing this madness, because they're a private company. They can't hide behind, you know, some sort of a government immunity. They can't do that.
Thank you. Here's a sheriff. Excuse me. Here's a question for Tim Cox. The question speaks to who funds in your program. Who would be funding? How would the funds be procured for a re-election process?
The same way. Our intent is every 2 years, like that, our members will run the process again and select a new candidate. In the GO system, somebody can run through the process twice. But we're trying to make this not a career job. We want somebody to go up there and serve for 2 years, and then we'll come back. So the intent is to shift the political paradigm and completely do away with these, you know, two-party systems. I can think back to about 1997. My mom thought, you know, the whole economic system was about to collapse. And she would kind of throw her hands. It's like, no, you know, there's more. You know, we need to think and be prepared for those things, but you also need to be thinking about the bigger picture and moving forward. So in our system, you know, we're still thinking longer term. Let's get true everyday American citizens in, and every 2 years we'll just bring in a new batch of legislators, but we will continue to raise the funds for those people.
Thank you, Tim. This may be a question for Stuart Rhodes. Can you comment on what's going on with Hillary Clinton and the United Nations regarding our firearms?
Yes, there's been a drive to circumvent the normal legislative process by instead doing things by treaties. But one important point is that no treaty trumps the Constitution. A treaty is not the same as an amendment to the Constitution. It does not trump it. So treaties are like statutes. They're beneath our Constitution. And so any treaty that would claim the authority to ban certain weapons and confiscate them is illegitimate under our Second Amendment. And we should resist it, just the same as if Congress tries to pass a law. But certainly there are people, currently political elites, who worship the United Nations and they worship international law. And in their mind, they can't do it by statute, they'll try it by treaty. So we should be on the guard against that.
Thank you. There's a question about the time frame of the collapse of the currency, and I'll take a stab at this because I've interviewed so many experts on this subject, and I'm looking at these things on a daily basis. The short answer is no one really knows when, but when I interviewed Dr. Ron Paul last August, at that time he said optimistically at best 2 to 4 years. Peter Schiff said about 8 to 12 months. John Williams, PhD from shadowstats.com, indicated 6 to 18 months. Gerald Celente, the trends forecaster, forecast the borders being closed for a period of time in 2012, the collapse, martial law, and Dr. Elliott's view, and I would concur, we don't really know, but we do know that the money supply has been increased significantly, and it has a lag effect on showing up as price inflation on Main Street. And as Dr. Elliott talked about earlier, the commodity prices are off the charts. So we feel towards the end of this year, we may be seeing inflation that will make the Jimmy Carter days look like a picnic in the park, meaning 20, 30, 40% inflation, and perhaps the onset of hyperinflation, perhaps as soon as 2012 is my best guess. But the time frame from the experts that we speak with on a regular basis pretty much say it's 6 months to 3 years. That seems to be where it falls. And the end value of really any currency in a full-blown hyperinflation is potentially zero. And so this is what we need to prepare for. And we've covered some of these things tonight in terms of food, firearms, family discussions, Plan B, protecting your assets with gold and silver. Obviously, the devil is in the details. We're only able to introduce some general concepts here. We've stated some of the big problems that we're facing as a nation, and we've talked about a few different solutions through sustainable communities, from oath keepers and alternative markets, abolishing the Federal Reserve from the Sue the Fed, auditing the Fed from Ron Paul's Campaign for Liberty, acquiring precious metals and education about them before you even invest through Dr. Elliott and through our asset preservation firm, and also Tim Cox cleansing the House of Representatives and replacing them with citizen candidates through the system that Tim described. So the thing is we do need to act. We can see if we can take 1 or 2 more questions. This one is asking, we didn't even touch a fraction of these questions. The next meeting, we're going to revisit how we can handle the dozens and dozens and dozens of questions that are coming at me. I can't even control a mouse. But what I would suggest is this. If you found this discussion valuable from our presenters, and you'd like to have another conference like this, send me an email, jychambers@msn.com, and give us your feedback, and we'll put the brains together behind the scenes here and find a way to tackle all of these questions. You can certainly contact me at 727-329-0048. I will get your questions answered either directly or via our presenters, because the questions are still pounding in here. And it is 8:30, and we did want to start on time and end on time, so I think I'm going to conclude. Sorry we couldn't take all the questions, but please realize, folks, there's many people from all over the country participating. Getting some feedback here. Larry, is there any comments you need to make before I sign us off?
Oh, John, may I say one thing? Let folks know that tonight on earthkeepers.org, right after this call concludes, I'll go on and answer as many questions as possible that are addressed to me. I'll do a written answer to those questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Stuart. Any closing comments or feedback from Dr. Davis?
Yes, John, thank you. I think that everyone, I was reading through the questions, and this is a very awakened group of people. And maybe we could talk more about solutions next time rather than background, and have the presenters go into more detail in terms of, I could give a lot more detail about, the tactics that we would use in order to go about suing the Federal Reserve, giving people confidence that this can actually happen. And I'm sure that each of the presenters could talk a little more depth about the solutions that they have, and that might be more helpful, because I think that you've got a group of people on this call that are very, very awake. They understand the issues, and they may not need as much background.